When planting a colorful flower garden, it doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, I think perfect is boring. What I like to do is mix up annuals and perennials and bulbs and just see what happens. That's when it really gets exciting. Hey, by following this approach, you're likely to have flowers blooming in your garden spring, summer, and fall. And the main thing to do is just to pick out things that you like, pull them together, and just go for it. And that's what we're going to do today. Make sure that you have plenty of flower power. You know, as a designer, I just have a thing for color. I love any form of color. I like really bright, beautiful colors. I like pastel colors. I just like all kinds of colors. And I love it when colors are coordinated. And it's no accident that I put on this shirt to talk about these tulips. And what I have here are 3 different varieties of tulips, all planted together. Now, as you may know, tulips will bloom early, mid, and late in a season, and it depends on the variety you choose if they bloom early, mid, or late. What I decided to do here was to make sure that these were all mid-season bloomers because I wanted one big blowout of color. And that's what you get here. You have this gorgeous orange one, and then you have this beautiful pale, almost sort of lemony, sorbet kind of yellow, and then this one that is pure white. And I just think it's a rockin' combination. So in this bed here, collectively, what I have planted are about 500 bulbs. Now I've also color coordinated this bed of tulips with this big urn up here. This urn is about 2 feet deep and it's filled with a great potting soil. In the fall, I fill it with tulip bulbs, and here I just went with one single color, but it's the very same tulip you see here, and you can just see the pink tones in it and the oranges. It's just a gorgeous tulip. This variety is called Minton. And if you'll notice, I actually have some pansies as companion plants blooming with them, and also along the front of the beds of these tulips, we have pansies. These are called antique shades, that's the variety, and overall the colors mix, I think, very well with this tulip combination. Now all of this works in concert with what I have on the front porch. You know, on my front porch I've painted those classic Windsor chairs a screaming orange, and on either side of the front door I've got a pair of urns filled with salmon colored geraniums, asparagus fern, which is so easy to grow, as well as a wonderful plant called a bacopa that blooms white, which matches the trim color around the house. So we have the white, we have the salmon up on the porch that's echoing with these colors on either side that flank the house itself. So as you can see, I'm a color coordination freak. Toby, your hydrangeas are really showing out today.
Aren't they?
They're gorgeous. Hey, look at these. You know, if I had one shrub to have, if I could only have one, it would have to be a hydrangea.
I agree. Definitely my favorite.
And I love the fact that you cut them and use them in the house.
Well, I mean, why not? They're right here in the backyard. Don't need a trip to the florist, just a trip to the backyard.
And cutting them doesn't hurt the shrub at all.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean they're going to rebloom. They won't rebloom, but you're not hurting the shrub.
And why not enjoy them in the house instead of just leaving them in the yard?
They last so long. And if you'll cut them in the morning, they tend to last longer than if you cut them in the afternoon. They won't tend to wilt as badly. These are beautiful. You know, hydrangeas alone in a low bowl really deliver the flower power, don't you think?
Right, yes. So simple and beautiful.
It really is, just gorgeous. Well, let's put them to work.
Okay, let's go.
These hydrangeas are going to be beautiful in here.
I know, they're just perfect.
You know, this is one of my favorite rooms in your house. It's so comfortable. I love the way you've used color and pattern, lots of pattern.
Yeah, thanks. So, you know, a lot of the big pieces of furniture are solids, but it's the accents that are so exciting, like the floral pillows and...
Right.
Yeah.
And the drapery.
Yeah, the drapery is a damask, which is a version of a flower as well.
It is.
And it's fine to mix. Yeah, you can mix the flowers with the fresh. It doesn't have to be matchy. It can just be coordinated.
Now you have the blue here, and in the next room you have that beautiful green and blue design.
So I love that. Like I have told you before, I love to bring a little bit of color into the next room. And the blue looks so pretty with the orange too, because it's a complement on the color wheel. So
you have this color echo going from the other room into here.
Perfect.
I love the fact that it's just a low, round mound of color.
Right. I love. Oh, hi, Izzy. I love a single flower. It's so sophisticated and simple, and it's great to keep it low in this setting where if we had friends here for conversation, we could see across. But then
it's one of my rules at the dining table.
Right.
You want to be able to see the people across the table.
Very much so. Make eye contact. But then when I have a party in here to keep things moving and it's a round table, I love a large, tall arrangement. Sometimes we put hors d'oeuvres here instead of the books.
Something more dramatic.
Yeah, much more dramatic. I love drama.
Drama, yeah, I've heard that about you. Well, what's wonderful about these hydrangeas, I just love the idea of bringing something in that's in season. It's so authentic and grounded.
Right, just like with your fruit and vegetables. Like, whatever's in season is what I use. So it doesn't have to be matched. If it's in your garden, bring it in and enjoy it.
Bringing the garden indoors.
Right.
It's a lovely idea.
Perfect.
Yeah. There are all kinds of winter projects you can do to bring life or a little bit of the garden into the home. And one of the simplest is to just take a flower bulb, like one of these Paperwhite Narcissus, and grow them into something gorgeous and fragrant. Now, what's interesting about Paperwhites is that you can grow them as long as you give them a little water and a little light and some warmth. What I'm talking about here is once you apply water to whatever medium you're growing them in, whether it's soil like this, or gravel, or in just water alone, they will begin to germinate and bloom within 6 weeks, okay? And you want to make sure that the temperature for the Paperwhites is between 65 and 75 degrees, and you don't want to keep them in direct sunlight. Now I grow these in lots of different ways. I like to mass them in a big bowl like you see here, growing in soil, or you can take a bulb and drop it in a glass container like that, add a little water. You can even pour some gravel over the top, and that flower will grow right out of the top and bloom. They're really indestructible. You see, what's great about them is that the flower is already in the bulb, and I'm going to sacrifice this one just to show you the baby flower. You see right there? There's the embryo of that flower, and all you have to do is give it some moisture, give it the temperature I just described, and some sunlight, and it will begin to grow and flower for you. Now, one thing that you can do is you can take these and plant them in containers and stage them. If you keep them slightly cooler, you're going to slow down the growth. What I like to do is plant on a weekend 2 or 3 containers and then stagger them as I bring them into the house. I can keep them in sort of a cool area like the garage and then bring them into the house where the temperature is in that 65 to 75 degree range, and they'll bloom. And so you can have sequential blooms all the way through the winter. So make sure you buy plenty of bulbs and keep them in storage in the refrigerator. Now, one last point. If you store them in the refrigerator, you want to make sure that they're not in contact with, or really in the same refrigerator with, apples or produce that give off ethylene gas, because that little embryo that I showed you will be destroyed by that gas. So if you can keep your Paperwhite bulbs, or any other bulb for that matter, in a refrigerator where they're alone and they're isolated, they're going to do much better for you. You know, Mike, there's a lot of different elements that go into a garden to create harmony and beauty.
Well, you've done a wonderful job here. I love the aspect of having the roses staged, you know, with other plants in the supporting cast.
Right.
I've really never liked the fact that you have rows of roses and nothing else. And you've done, you know, so well with the backdrop of these, you know, the woody plants to give them a foil for the contrast, and then planting the skinny legs, if there are any skinny legs with the roses, with perennials and annuals.
Sure.
So this is working wonderful.
Well, I think all of these characters conspire to create something that's more than any single one.
Well, that's right. You've got a diversity, and I've learned in one of the laws of nature is that diversity is stability, and so it makes much a stronger feel to the garden as well.
It does, and you've pointed out the different types of plants we have here, but even among roses, there's so much diversity, and form and shape and fragrance and color.
It goes on, and even personality.
Yes.
You know, it's just wonderful. Roses are all unique, and you know, the interesting thing about modern roses is that they seem to be all the same. They were kind of bred to be these erect soldiers, you know, to produce these wonderful flowers. You know, they achieve that effect, but there's so much more to a rose. And when you go back to the garden varieties and the noisettes, like you've incorporated in this garden, you start getting other things, other characteristics, other behaviors even, as well as texture, form, and color. So it's so wonderful to see roses used in the context of this kind of garden with other things, so that they can show off their best beauty.
Well, and they also have interesting stories about how they were developed and where they came from and so forth, which I have to say has always mesmerized me, and I think was one of the reasons that led me to create this garden, to collect as many of the noisettes as I could.
Well, I'm so happy that you're using the noisettes because they're singularly the American rose. I mean, they were developed here in America. You know, there's no other garden other than in Charleston that is trying to do what you're doing here with showcasing the noisettes. And they are very historic, dating back into the late 1700s and 1800s, and so it's perfect.
Well, we appreciate all your help in helping us locate those roses and get them here.
Well, that part has been just the fun part. You've shown the wonderful work that goes into it and the beauty that comes from that.
Well, thank you, Mike. I hope you'll come back soon.
Well, we will.
No, you silly thing. That's not what I meant by rose water. Now, for a real rose water inspired drink using rose water that you find in a little concentrate, I've come up with a twist on a traditional Ramus Gin Fizz. Ramus Gin Fizz was invented in New Orleans in the 1880s by Henry Ramus. It was so popular in Louisiana that Huey Long, when he was governor of Louisiana, actually brought bartenders to New York so he could have a Ramus Gin Fizz every morning.
I think that's all right. I think that's all right. But be sure about it.
So what I've done is a little twist on the traditional gin fizz, inspired by rose water and using an iris flavored gin. It's a really simple recipe, but you have to have the right tools. A shaker is really key in making a good gin fizz. So we start with lemon, and we do a juice of a lemon and put the seeds there. So we do 1 whole lemon and the juice of a lime. Lime really, you know, the lemon and lime gives it that daiquiri base. If you really look at a lot of cocktails and the history of cocktails, there's a lot of citrus to give it a base, and then the sugar. If you think of a good margarita and different cocktails, a daiquiri, the Ramus Gin Fizz, although the twist on this is it actually has cream in it. So we do the lime, and then we're going to add some of our wonderful, about 4 ounces of the gin. And I love this iris flavored gin. I've been experimenting a lot with craft cocktails, and there's so many great ingredients out there that are different to work with, and this is one that I found. I find that these new ingredients really inspire you to come up with some new twist on some old recipes. And simple syrup, and I don't know if you know how to make simple syrup, but it's just sugar and water cooked down, and you want it thick. This has a nice consistency, so you don't want to water down your cocktail. I have 1 ounce of simple syrup. And then let me tell you about rose water. It's very intense. I mean, it tastes just like it smells, like a bouquet of roses. But you don't want your cocktail to be too perfumey, so we're just going to put about 3 drops. And then we're going to add the cream, which is going to help give it a nice froth. And the egg white, 1 egg white. In Natchez, where I live, we talk about cocktails a lot, and if there's a cocktail before noon, it's called a libation. And we have a lot of brunches, and this would be considered a libation. It's a morning cocktail. It's not something you would typically have later in the day. So I guess the egg white counts for a breakfast item or brunch. We're gonna put plenty of ice in it. I don't have it completely filled with ice because you're gonna want enough room to really shake it. And so I've got the shaker. What we're doing is we're trying to froth the egg white and the cream in it. You know, this should have a nice frothy head, just almost like a beer is what you want when you pour it. You do this for a while. And look at that nice pale color from the Iris gin. And there's how you make a floral fizz. Now you need to taste this.
Thank you, my dear. Cheers. Wow. Now that's more like it. What if I told you there was a family of plants that make great cut flowers that you can use in the house? They're easy to grow. You can have a succession of blooms so you can cut anytime you want, well, within season and within reason. And that this plant comes back year after year. It's perennial. Well, that would be these lilies. I love the fact that these blooms are bicolored. They have a deep, rich, sort of orange, almost red center that gives way to a lovely apricot at the edge. And then the little speckles, well, they add a lot as well. I love to arrange these quite simply with another flower form, like a hydrangea. It's white and creamy and has a completely different flower form. A big, round, ball-shaped flower contrasted with this. It's dynamite. Now come on over here. I want to show you a bed that's finishing up. Just take a look at these. These bloomed earlier. Now when you're thinking about lilies, think about this. What I have first are my Asiatics. They bloom first and they're finishing up here. Then come the LA hybrids. I just showed you one of those, first crown. And then the next are the Oriental hybrids to bloom. So you get this succession of bloom, early, mid, and late, which is great. Now, after they bloom, you see I didn't cut these for flower arranging. That is a seed head right there. What you want to do is just cut off your lilies like this and just discard the seed head. And what happens is you want to leave this foliage and bolster that bulb under there for next year's bloom. So that's the great thing about these lilies is they come back year after year. Now when you plant them, you want to make sure you give them plenty of sun. They like full sun, and the soil must drain well. Otherwise the bulbs will rot. So I just wanted to give you an example of lilies in a garden setting. Earlier I was showing you how I had them in rows for cutting for using in the house. But here, they're part of the landscape. Here's first crown in bloom with this backdrop of 9-bark, which is very beautiful. And if you'll look here below, this is the first wave of Asiatics that I've already flowered. And what I need to do today is take off the seed heads just as I showed you before, and I will leave the foliage. And next year, this display will come back. By the way, this variety down here is called Orange Pixie, and it bloomed about 2 weeks before these started flowering. So that's what I love in the garden, is that succession of color blocking, bold, bright bloom. I just love this time of year. It's when the hydrangeas begin to bloom. I've kind of become a hydrangea crazed fool in a way. I have all different kinds. Everywhere I can find a shady spot that they'll thrive in, I stick a hydrangea in there. For instance, just look at these two basic types. This is called a mop head, or the big rounded head macrophylla hydrangea. And then this one up here you can see is one called a lace cap. So what we have here are two entirely different flower forms, but they require the same conditions. They like a little bit of sun, I would say partial shade, or you could give them even just some morning sun up until about 11 o'clock. And as their name implies, hydrangea, they like moist soil, consistently moist soil. Not soggy, wet feet, not boggy ground, but just consistently moist soil. And yes, it is true you can change the color by changing the pH or the chemistry of the soil. If you want them to be pink like this, what you want is a soil that is much more alkaline, meaning that you would want to apply a lot of lime, hydrated lime around them. If you want them to be blue, well, you can add something that acidifies the soil, like aluminum sulfate. Now, don't think you can just throw a little around there and it'll change automatically. It'll take a full season for these plants to uptake those chemicals which have a bearing on the color of the bloom. As you can imagine, I also love to use hydrangeas and flower arrangements, but something I learned a long time ago, whether you're cutting lace caps or you're cutting these mop head types, you want to do two things. You want to cut the hydrangea bloom in the early morning, okay? Secondly, what you want to do is you want to cut a more mature bloom. You can see they're coming on in waves, the blooms. Here's one that's just forming here. Here's one that's a little more mature here. You see, here's one that's coming along. Here's one next. But this one looks like a much older bloom, and this one's even older than that there. So the more mature the bloom, the better it's going to hold up, because what will happen is you'll get what I call hydrangea collapse with the bloom. You'll cut them, they'll look fine, you'll put them in a vase of water, you'll come back 30 minutes later and they will have just collapsed. So you want them cut in the morning, you want them cut as mature plants, and then what I do is just take off a few of the lower leaves like this, and it's ready to go into some water. You want to get it in water as quickly as possible. Isn't that a gorgeous flower? You know, we laugh and kid around about the idea of flower power, but I believe flowers really are powerful. Their beauty, well, it can transform the way we think and feel. They can add such tranquility to our lives. Now, you don't have to have a huge flower garden. Even a small patch can be planted out, and it doesn't even have to be perfect. I think those are the best ones. Hey, if you have examples of your flower garden, post them on my Facebook page. I'd love to see them. And until next time, for The Garden Home, I'm Alan Smith. I would really love to do some of these segments with different personalities, you know. I could do Bob the Loud. This is First Crown. Everything's loud. I'm Bob the Loud. I just love the color blue. You know, it's that the woman you went to church, the little lady at church. She's so nice to everybody. Everything's great. Every day's sunshine. Honey, it's been such a long time since I saw you. No, it wasn't. You just saw me last night. I love you anyway. Okay. All right, ready?